And joining me now is the Labor Secretary, Tom Perez, who is here, though, in a personal political capacity on behalf of the Clinton campaign. Secretary Perez, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Great to be here in my personal capacity with you, Chuck.
Fair enough. Let me start with trade and specifically TPP. Donald Trump earlier this week railing against it and then added this: we have to withdraw, okay? We have to. And we should seek a guarantee from Hillary Clinton that she won't sign it. Now, by the way, he's got the same position on TPP as Bernie Sanders, who wants it in the platform, opposition to TPP. Should Secretary Clinton oppose this and guarantee she will oppose it throughout her 4 years?
Secretary Clinton has been very clear that she opposes TPP, and Secretary Clinton has been very clear that she has a real plan to bring jobs back to America. She has a real plan on trade, which starts with making sure that we're tough on trade. So if China is dumping steel or dumping aluminum, she's called for a trade prosecutor reporting directly to her. She also has a plan to bring manufacturing jobs and expand them here in America by investing in workers. Donald Trump is a fraud. He's the outsourcer in chief, Chuck, and listening to him talk about how he's going to put America first again, he spent his entire career putting his own profits first.
Well, he's not the only one against
this. Mr.
Secretary,
I understand that.
Bernie Sanders is just as vehement against this, and in fact, his people are fighting to get opposition in the Democratic platform. So what do you say to Bernie Sanders?
Well, again, this election is between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is telling the American people that he's going to put America first on trade. Donald Trump has said that wages are too high in America. Donald Trump has said that a low minimum wage is a good thing for America. Donald Trump makes his suits in Mexico when I've been to a plant in Ohio that uses union labor to make their suits. Donald Trump has said repeatedly that, oh, I'm going to make America first. But when you look at the reality of what he has done, he has fought collective bargaining in Las Vegas. The people on the Strip who organized the Trump Hotel, they did it over his dead body. He doesn't believe in the prevailing wage. This notion that he's somehow going to be a champion for workers flies in the face of his record, because he hasn't put America first. He's put his own profits first. It's all about him.
Let me ask you, though, specifically about TPP. Labor Secretary Perez said this about TPP. In your capacity as Labor Secretary, you championed it. In one op-ed that we found in the Boulder Daily Camera, you called it critical to our 21st century competitiveness. That was over a year ago. Do you still believe in that version of the TPP?
Sure. This is what the president tasked me with doing, Chuck, and I was proud to do it, which is we want to go to school on the mistakes and the lessons of past trade agreements. We want to build a trade regime that, again, the North Star is the American worker, protecting the American worker. And so we want to make sure that when we negotiate with Mexico and Vietnam and others, that we have the strongest protections for workers that we've ever had. And that's what we set out to do, and that's what I believe we have done. The President and Secretary Clinton have a disagreement on whether TPP has gone that far. You know, this is not the first time in the history of the Democratic Party that there have been differences of opinion. Where they are totally in lockstep is their belief that we have to put the American worker first, and we have to go to school on the lessons of history. And that's exactly what we're doing in the work that we've been doing on trade.
Now, you just said the President tasked you with this when it comes to TPP. Let me ask Tom Perez, political citizen here, personal citizen in your capacity. Do you support TPP? Take your Labor Secretary hat off. Do you support it?
No. Absolutely. What we have done in the negotiations with Mexico and with Vietnam are, I think, some of the most far-reaching protections that we've seen in a labor agreement. And that's the work that I have done, and I'm proud of that work we've done, because if we're going to succeed in protecting, if we're going to succeed in protecting American workers, we've got to make sure we have tough, enforceable provisions. And that's what I've done, Chuck, and that's why I'm proud of the work I've done for this president. And you know, again, President Obama and Secretary Clinton disagree on whether it is tough enough. I respect those differences. I'm proud of the work that I've done for this president, and I'll continue to do for this president. But the reality is where we are in total agreement as a party is that we want to make sure that we put American workers first in everything we do and that we have tough enforcement. And this administration has been tough on China in dumping, and Hillary Clinton wants to build on that progress and take it to the next level in moving forward. And that's where we have dramatic agreement. And we have to compete against the rest of the world, and we can do that as long as there's a level playing field. And that's where, again, another source of agreement for everybody.
But to button up here, you still, you personally support where TPP is going here. You personally support this.
Well, we're working our tails off to make sure that we are consistent with what the president wants us to do, making sure that Mexico and Vietnam and all of these countries, that we have the strongest protections, because we have to protect American workers. And that is what we set out to do. And that's what we continue to do as we negotiate these agreements. And we've been working our tails off toward that end. And the same thing with enforcement, because we have, in the enforcement context, historically, we have taken too long. And so we have put in provisions that are going to enable us to move even faster when we see violations. And those are, again, innovations. As a former career prosecutor, I think those move the ball forward. And again, Secretary Clinton
let me ask you this on enforcement. Okay, but let me ask you this on enforcement, because this is what you always hear about trade deals. Oh, we're going to have this enforcement. And every trade deal always claims, everybody always claims with the next trade deal, we've learned the lessons of the previous trade deal. I can go back to the NAFTA debate in '93, and I heard plenty of Democratic arguments that were in favor of making sort of similar cases you are. Let me ask you this. Do you understand why the public doesn't believe any trade deal, any enforcement will ever kick in, because they've never seen it before? So how do you fix that?
Sure. Again, I've made house calls in this job. I've talked to my friends in labor. I've talked to people on the front lines in Ohio and Indiana and elsewhere, and they understand, and I understand that promises made have not always been promises kept. But the question presented is, can we learn from the mistakes of history, or do we simply throw up our hands and say this is too hard, we can't do anything? Do we build a bubble around the United States? Secretary Clinton has said, you know what, we can compete in a global economy by making sure that we have a level playing field for workers, by making sure we expand on the important efforts that the Obama administration has put in place on enforcement, by having a trade prosecutor reporting directly to me. So I think life is always about learning from your history and not repeating the mistakes of history. What Donald Trump wants to do, on the other hand, is a lot of blather and a lot of bluster and no substance. And his whole history, Chuck, the only hole in the wall along the Mexican border is going to be that hole so he can drive the truck and pick up the suits and other things he makes in Mexico using that low-wage labor. The notion that he's looking after American workers flies in the face of his entire history of using H-2B workers down in Florida, of exploiting workers elsewhere. I mean, he's a fraud.
All right, but I want to go back to your views on trade here and the issue of NAFTA. I know you've been critical of NAFTA. You believe there are lessons to be learned of NAFTA. Do you believe NAFTA overall, looking back 20-plus years, net plus or net minus for the United States of America?
Well, again, there were winners and losers in NAFTA, and that's the reality of what it was. And the biggest challenge that we have to learn from NAFTA was that the provision of NAFTA said that all the other countries had to do was comply with their own laws. And if their own laws are Swiss cheese, as was the case in Mexico, well, then you're not asking them to do much. So it was the state of the art at the time, but it wasn't enough. And so, again, the question presented as we try to compete in a global economy is, can we learn from the mistakes of history? Secretary Clinton believes that we can compete in a global economy. We have the best workforce in the world, and when you create that level playing field, when you're tough on China and other countries, and she's been around the world negotiating, she knows how to hold people accountable, and those sorts of measures. And then what she wants to do here at home, Chuck, building a manufacturing base, expanding on the progress that President Obama has made, investing in the skills of American workers. You don't hear anything from Donald Trump about that. All you hear is a low minimum wage is not a bad thing for America.
Look,
high wages, wages are too high in this country.
Let me move to another line here.
Sure.
Are you qualified to be Commander-in-Chief?
Well, I'll leave that to the others to decide. I have been doing my job as Labor Secretary, and that's my focus every day, and that's what
let me
I'm
ask you this:
continue to
what
do.
makes
I got
somebody
204 days to the.
I understand. What makes somebody qualified to be Commander-in-Chief?
Well, again, I think you look at President Obama, and he has done remarkable work exercising judgment. His North Star is the middle class, those who are in the middle class and want to stay there, those who are striving to get there. And I think President Obama is going to go down as one of the most consequential presidents in U.S. history as a result of his work in saving us from the precipice of the Great Depression. It could have been a depression, but for his leadership. And it's been an unmitigated honor to work with him and for him.
Look, I know you've been very hesitant about answering any VP questions and the vetting questions, but let me ask this, since it's clear your name's somewhere in the mix. Tell me how you would describe your foreign policy philosophy.
Well, I haven't run a Miss Universe pageant, and I don't own any golf courses in Scotland, Chuck, so I don't have what Donald Trump has, and I'm very sorry about that. But it's all about judgment, and Donald Trump is such a volatile individual. And what I have seen working with Secretary Clinton is that she is a steady hand. We are in the midst of a very challenging set of circumstances around the world, and you need someone with a steady hand. And Secretary Clinton, with her experience, with her steady hand, and with her sound judgment. Judgment is what it's all about, and I think she has exercised sound judgment throughout.
Let me ask you this: what do you believe is the biggest threat that faces the next administration internationally?
Well, again, we're continuing to confront the threat of foreign terrorism, ISIL and others. We continue to see nations that are having dramatic challenges, and a lot of the same questions are being asked around the world, whether it's in Europe, where you have so many people in the far right who are gaining traction, whether it's Le Pen in France or others elsewhere, Austria most recently as well. And so I think it's a critically important moment for American leadership. And when I think about Donald Trump, the Trump train wreck is not simply a train wreck on trade or on the minimum wage or on immigration. It's a train wreck for American values. And one of the many reasons, Chuck, that I am so excited to support Secretary Clinton is because she understands that when you attack Muslims, when you attack immigrants, you're attacking the core of American values. And I think around the world, the rest of the world is looking to America for leadership, looking for us to summon those values of inclusion and opportunity and optimism. I don't understand for the life of me why Donald Trump is always saying America's in decline. When Ronald Reagan was president, he was taking out full-page ads saying America is a laughingstock. I look around the world, and when I travel internationally in my job, everybody's looking to America for guidance. Everybody says to me, we admire you as the face of the earth in terms of the values that we should be upholding. I think America is a remarkable leader, and with Secretary Clinton moving forward, the challenges of terrorism, the challenges of global inequality, we got to make sure that our economy at home and our economy around the world works for everybody and not just for a few.
Let me ask you this. You were confirmed, when you were confirmed as Labor Secretary, it was right along partisan lines. Not a single Republican supported your confirmation. If you're a part of the next administration in whatever capacity, and it's a Democratic administration, and you're asked to work with Republicans, it seems like you have a lot of extra work to do to start building a bridge to Republicans. What's your experience working across party lines?
You know, actually, Chuck, I respectfully disagree. I mean, you look at one of the most important pieces of legislation that was passed, and it didn't garner a lot of attention because it was bipartisan and it involved the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. We're revamping the skills superhighway for the 21st century so that people can get access to the jobs of today and tomorrow. Passed overwhelmingly in a bipartisan fashion, and I was proud to be very involved with Republicans and Democrats in the passage of that. You know, the president deployed me out to the West Coast when we had the ports dispute, and most recently I worked with folks in the Verizon suit. And I think leadership is about listening, about getting things done. And one of the remarkable things I learned with Senator Kennedy over the years is that you know, idealism and pragmatism are not mutually exclusive. And he was a master at working across the aisle. And one of the reasons I love working and helping Secretary Clinton is because she gets that as well. And she did so many things in a bipartisan fashion, whether it was the Children's Health Insurance Program, immigration reform in 2007, which unfortunately didn't make it to the finish line. She understands that we're stronger together. And the American people want progress. They want us to move forward. And that's something I pride myself in, is making progress and working with folks across the ideological spectrum to get that done.
Before you were Labor Secretary, you were appointee at the Justice Department. I got to ask you about the kerfuffle involving Attorney General Lynch, former President Clinton, the tarmac decision. Secretary Lynch has, Attorney General Lynch has since said that she is just going to take the recommendation from the prosecutors and the FBI and not get involved in any other judgment on that. Appropriate decision by her?
I have great respect for Loretta Lynch. I've known her for years. She's a person of great integrity, and I trust her. And I know that
was the meeting a mistake in hindsight?
On this, well, again, this was, as I understand it, a chance meeting where they ran into each other on, I think, the tarmac of an airport. This wasn't, I called you up and said, can we meet next Wednesday at 3 o'clock? It was a chance meeting at the airport. And anyone who knows Bill Clinton knows that, you know, if he runs into someone at the airport by chance, he's going to come up and say hello to them. And so that, I think it's really important for your listeners to appreciate that this was not something that was planned in advance. It happened, and she has spoken, I think, very clearly about what she intends to do. And again, I have tremendous respect for Loretta Lynch and tremendous respect as someone who worked at the Justice Department in both a career capacity and a non-career capacity. I have great respect for the dedicated career professionals at the Department of Justice.
Over a decade ago, the one time you ran for elective office on your own, Montgomery County Council.
Sure.
Tell me something that you learned from your time there that you think applies to national politics.
Well, you know, one of my closest friends when I served in local government was we had one Republican on the council, and we worked very closely together. The thing about local and state governance, and I had the privilege of being in both, is that you can't afford to be ideological because you got to get stuff done. You got to move the ball down the field. And I was honored to serve and work together with colleagues across the aisle on a host of critically important issues involving public safety, involving education. At a state level, I was the labor secretary when we had the foreclosure crisis, and I was the governor's point person on that. And we were able to bring together a very wide array of stakeholders around a series of very forward-leaning reforms, and both industry supported it and consumer groups supported it. You know, when you build a big table and you bring a good listening ear and a healthy dose of humility to the enterprise, you can get a lot done. And that's what I loved about working in local and state government, is that you really had to get things done. You couldn't afford to be ideological. And it frustrates me to all get out when we see the minimum wage should have been increased. Newt Gingrich and President Bill Clinton and Ted Kennedy worked together on that in the 90s. Every president except two since FDR signed the original bill has signed an increase in the minimum wage. And the Republican opposition to this is so ill-conceived. And you look at red states like Arkansas and Alaska and Nebraska, South Dakota that passed voter initiatives on the minimum wage. This isn't a red-blue issue. and it's unfortunate. And I'm hopeful under Secretary Clinton's leadership that we're going to continue to make progress, and I have great confidence that under her leadership, you're going to see immigration reform in 2017, right. Comprehensive immigration reform, other critical issues where we can help move America forward, because she's all about we, and he's all about himself. And that to me is the fundamental difference between these two candidates.
Very quickly, follow up on emails. Do you believe the issue is a legitimate concern for voters? This transparency and trust issue that Secretary Clinton is losing on with Donald Trump right now?
Well, I don't think people trust Donald Trump.
Well, right now, on honest and trustworthiness, he scored higher than she did in our poll.
Well, you know, she has said that she has a lot of work to do to make sure she earns the trust of all voters. The voters who know her best were the voters of New York, and not once but twice. They voted to elect her to the United States Senate, and they voted overwhelmingly. And then I look at the Democratic primary that we just completed. She won by almost 4 million votes, that sort of advantage. And what it reflected was people understand that she is running for president because she wants to break down barriers of opportunity. She wants to build a better America. She's all about making sure that the issues that are keeping people up at night, whether it's paid leave or child care or health care, all of these issues, that we are moving the ball forward for the American people. And when you've been attacked for 25 years relentlessly, you're always going to have some challenges. And the Hillary Clinton that I've gotten to know well, and the Hillary Clinton that the voters of New York got to kick the tires on very well, they have always said and consistently said that we trust her. And I am confident that when the American people, those who are having challenges with that, when they look at the body of her work across her life, including the work she did when she was not in the spotlight, things like helping to desegregate schools in the Deep South, or registering voters in the Rio Grande Valley, or the work she did in South Carolina to get kids out of, or young people out of adult prisons, that really gives me, and I think the American people, a window into her moral compass. And her moral compass is about helping those who are in the shadows.
Secretary Perez, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that maybe you're the second most famous graduate from Canisius High in Buffalo, New York. And I'll just, on this show at least, you're the second most famous graduate from a Canisius High. Anyway, Tom Perez.
And I will always be. I will always be. And Tim Russert, as you know, the blue and gold of Meet the Press was also the blue and gold of Canisius High School.
Tom Perez, always a pleasure, sir. Thanks for coming on Meet the Press and sharing your views.
Take care.
You got it. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.